Let's stay here just for a moment. And I want to talk a little bit about leadership
Mm.
to round out this episode because the metrics are great. Measuring it is great. These fancy dashboards are great. What have we learned as leaders that drive results? Because it's a significantly larger impact than I ever thought, right? Both of us are self starters and drivers. And I think it's no different than like you see all the time overly talented NFL, NBA players. They get drafted. Here's a couple good examples. Jamarcus Russell, freak specimen of an athlete, right? Zero intangibles, zero work ethic. And I think coming from minds and a place where, let's just call it what it is, because we're drivers and because we have that experience of going through the shit, it's just an expectation we put on ourselves. We don't need anybody to tell us to get shit done or to do things we want to do. If we want something, we're going to go do it. If we
Mhm.
don't, we're not. And most people do not operate like that. So, my biggest takeaway in the last year, especially, and again, shout out to Steve Trang and Ren Bartlett's sales leadership training, because this is where a lot of this discovery came from, is I didn't realize that the bottleneck was us. The bottleneck was me. Like, I have not been the type of leader, the caliber of leader to attract the right people to the company. We didn't deserve the right people. And we still don't deserve the caliber of people in the future that I know we want to hire and grow this thing to. That's been a big revelation in my mind is like, and we talk about this, right? Being a thumb guy and not a finger guy. That's what our culture is built around. So it is true, man. The bottleneck is you. If your wholesale operation, if your business, whatever your industry is, if there's a bottleneck, the issue is you. It's not the person you hired. Either you haven't attracted the right talent or you haven't set them up to succeed in the right way and trained them and onboarded them properly, or you haven't fired them fast enough to bring in somebody else. It's you. It's not them.
We just finished up going to the Q1 Collective Genius event, and that was a big topic. I think the theme of that one was what's the relationship between the CEO and COO. However, the content of all of it was leadership and development. And these are all people who have businesses, who do it successfully, who want to become better. And every big lesson there was around you, like around us, the limiting beliefs that we have, the ceiling that we have, or I guess the lid is us. It is not the people underneath us or who we could bring in to be those people. Did you have a couple of big takeaways from Q1 Collective Genius?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up. For me, leadership has kind of always been this fluffy thing. Honestly, like how I used to view leadership as this fluffy bullshit. Like somebody that's a rah rah guy is a leader. And I never needed somebody like that in my life. So again, looking at things through the lens of me and not what everybody else needs, just like we have that bias as humans. But at that mastermind, really learning that CEO COO relationship and how clarity trickles down to the rest of the organization. That was my biggest takeaway is like, I think leadership is kind of this fluffy term. What does it really mean? It means that you're setting a clear vision for the rest of the company to follow. You're communicating that vision, and then you're setting up the team to execute that vision. And so that's at a really high level. But then on each one of those, you dive deep into the tasks and what needs to happen with that to get to where you want to be. And when you boil it down to that level of clarity, for me, it's very actionable. The leadership, ooh, COO, big titles, shiny, that sounds fancy. Wow. That doesn't provide me any value. It's looking at that relationship on getting into the clarity, getting into the meat and potatoes of what do you want to accomplish? What are our highest priorities? What do we need to set up to really go attack those? You have to go like multiple layers deeper. So that was my biggest takeaway is seeing people do that like live on stage and in the presentations we saw about how they chop it up live,
Hmm.
which you can't really see anywhere else. Like you can't go to an Apple, a Microsoft, a Google, whatever, and like be in a meeting and watch the CEO and COO talk about strategic vision. And then, okay, great. We got all these new visionary ideas. Now what? You can't see that. So Insane value, guys. If you're not a part of a high level mastermind, you need to. No matter where you're at, maybe you're not ready for CEO, COO type of thing, but there is value in getting mentorship, being a part of a community, paying for it to be in those rooms with people doing more than you.
Can you talk just for a minute about what you did to get into a room like that?
Oh boy. Yeah, I led with value. To get into a room of people that are doing more than you have to lead with value. You can't ask if you don't have value. And I didn't even ask, right? This is the whole concept of the go giver. It's like if you give, then ask, how are you going to be perceived? People want to be a part of somebody like that. They want to be plugged in with somebody. They want to be doing business with somebody that's going to be a giver. And so, really, what I did when I got started is I gave the top wholesaler in my market my first few deals. Like, I got them under contract and I sought out who is doing the most amount of deals in my market because I just want to ask them questions and I want to get to that level. So, let me think about this more long term. That's
That's
the big
hard to
thing.
do.
Yeah, that's the big thing, though, right? It's like, if you want to be the solopreneur, and this all depends on your why and how you want to set it up, right? If you want to be the solopreneur that's earning a high, 6-figure salary, you want to make a couple hundred grand a year, you can be doing one or two wholesale deals a month by yourself and maybe with a VA. If you want to grow this thing into a business that runs without you, you're going to need way more skills and way more firepower. The only way to do that is to go seek counsel and go add value to others that are doing more than you. That's the only way you're going to know. And then you got to fail your way through it. So that's the thing, man, is it's always looking about how can I add value to others? And that's what I love about these high level masterminds too, is that is the culture. That is the vibe. People are trying to outgive each other because they know the law of reciprocity says if somebody gives, that person is going to want to give something of value back. And it might not happen in that day. It might be 5 or 10 years from now, but they will remember.
That is so important in that specific community because it is not going to a conference to watch a few people who are doing a big thing and get inspired by them. The inspiration comes from the ideas and the execution that they're showing, but that's not the intent. The intent is how do you broaden your mindset and then ask the actionable questions of how do you get there. That's the big one of the big things I've noticed from that community, and everyone's willing to share, and not just willing to share the good things. It's a here's the shit I went through to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah. Which people don't talk about on social media enough, right? How many deals they lose money on, how many bad hires they have if they're not profitable. Everybody talks about the vanity metrics, revenue, deal size. Look at this check, not the real shit.
I would say going back to Q1, that I really had two big takeaways. So the first was that, and I think it was Eric Brewer, kind of during one of the final speeches, summarized it by saying that the way, and I'm paraphrasing here, uh, the way that we started the business or that you get your first couple of wholesale deals is just action. And you build the skill sets of being the doer and getting stuff done and solving all the problems and immediately executing. And you get really good at doing all that. And then when you start to build the team, you take that same, here's what got me here, and then you continue to repeat that until you realize that what you actually need is the leadership skills, which isn't the rah rah. It's the how do you coach, train, and teach people to be successful on their own so that way they can coach, train, and teach people to be successful on their own. And that was like oh, okay, yeah, I've always viewed myself as being a good doer, not always a good teacher, not always a good mentor. And that's the skill set that I'm like, this explains why we've had a lot of turnover at the company because I didn't know who I was hiring. I didn't know how to hire them. I didn't know the right questions to ask.
Right. But for somebody listening to this, you have to go through that. You have to go
Absolutely.
through the eating shit period. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite Alex Hormozy quotes is he says, the problem with starting your own business and entrepreneurship is the Rocky cutscene lasts 30 seconds in the movie, right? That's the eating shit period. That's where he's trying to lose a bunch of weight, getting ready for the fight or whatever, and he's training really hard, sacrificing everything. But in real life, that can last years. It can last a decade, right? And that's the thing is it's like Yes, we have to learn to be better leaders, but we had to do, fail, 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 do, fail, fail, fail to even be in that position. Okay, now I can focus on being a better leader. Because
Yeah.
if you're just a visionary and you're like pie in the sky, I'm the leader, I'm too good for cold calling, I'm the CEO, I'm not going to call on my leads, I'm not going to help our team get deals. You're going to lose
Absolutely. Yeah, because you don't know the skill sets at that point to be able to teach them to the next person.
100%.
And the second big thing was from the keynote speaker. It was Cameron Herold. That was an inspiration. Just watching him, it was actionable. He made you feel stupid if you didn't understand business because he's like, business is easy, but business is easy, and he acknowledged it because he's been groomed for it since he was a kid, and
So
he's been practicing it his entire adult life.
he's a high level COO, right?
Yes, scaled multiple companies to over 100 million. His most recent and probably publicly known is 1-800 Got Junk. And he's had an impact not only within his circle, but also on, and he name dropped several people during that conversation who've had an impact on their own large scale businesses. And so he has a stack of proof of credibility of why he does what he does. And I think he even started a COO Alliance, which is a networking training community to help people become better leaders. But one of his things when he talked about hiring is he says, I only hire people who want to grow. And that, when I heard it, it was like, "Oh, that makes sense." Somebody asked, "How? What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, I'm asking him, what kind of books are you reading? What kind of podcasts are you listening to? What are you doing for your own personal self development?" And I realized that's something I haven't asked in any of our interview processes. It's like you can't force feed people information and then expect it to stick. And so when I thought about that, and I thought about what you commented earlier, gosh, you're a natural driver. You're always out looking to grow and try to develop. Well, of course, like that's the style of person you want in your company, or that you want to partner with, or that you want to network with, whatever that is. And
I'm
so that was my other big takeaway.
I'm so glad you brought this up. What percentage of people do you think fit that growth mindset mold? Let's talk just in the US. Let's just talk in the US.
I would guess maybe 5 to 10, maybe 15%. It's not many,
5 to let's just call it 10%.
maybe.
Maybe. I think it's a lot less. But one of my biggest mistakes, and as you were saying that, I started to get a little uncomfortable. I don't know if you could tell, because this is the thing about hiring, right? Like, and this is where we've gotten kicked in the nuts in the last 2.5, 3 years,
Hmm.
is underestimating the amount of people that you need to interview to find the right person. Even if they're all referrals, all from social media, like they're all high quality candidates, if only 5 to 10% of them, which I think 10% is high, if only 1 out of 10 people are of that growth mindset, that means you got to, for every legit interview that you got to interview 10x that many people to find the right person. And that's the thing that I underestimated significantly, is the amount of people that I need to interview just to find the right person. I thought I could interview like 10 people and find the right person. What that's telling me is we need to interview 100 people to find the right position. That is such a monumental shift in mindset. And we're at the point now where it's becoming even more and more clear that, like, in order to grow any business to where you want it to go, it's all a people problem, and attracting the highest caliber of talent that you can afford. How do you do that? You have to be the kind of leader that people would want to go work for and with.
Absolutely. And I had one other conversation with Jesus Toledo, who runs 80/20 REI, and he was talking about expanding that business out. And his comment was like, my goal, and he asked this, I think, of Cameron Herold, is how do I go about becoming the person that allows me to attract someone from a business that is 5 times where I want to be and be a leader that that person can follow?
Oh, such a good question.
Yeah.
And the answer?
Look inward, continue to train. Yeah, he had some really interesting comments there about growing business, and I think also that hit home for me with us, which is if you really want to grow in any capacity, you have to be able to bring somebody in, whether that's a mentor or if it's a paid coaching program, who has been there and probably been at the 2 to 5 times bigger company, because it's easy for them to play your game. They've already done it. That's minor leagues for them. So if you can bring them in, whether it's in a full time position or just as mentorship, they can help get you through a lot of these steps quicker. So your eating shit phase is always going to be there, but maybe you're going the wrong direction and just plowing into it and you don't even know it.
Yeah. Well, and Jason Lewis did this presentation too on if you're a CEO, how do you become COO-able? And he
Mm.
went through the different items. You have to be able to afford them. You have to be able to train them. You have to provide them with the right opportunity for growth. And like you have to check all those boxes off before you can then go attract a high level COO. And that takes a long time, man. A long freaking time. It does.
And think about that from the person who's just starting out. Like, I want to get my first VA. You can apply the same mindset,
Yeah.
the same checklist.
Yeah.
Now, the caliber and the answer to each of those questions is going to change for each position you bring in, but the checklist essentially remains the same.
Love that. So, in closing, what's your view on mentorship, Collective Genius, some of the other masterminds we're in?
I find myself oftentimes getting so bogged down in the minutia of the day to day because you've got to keep the ship running. And you're always trying to solve the little problems that until I get into those type of settings, I don't have the ability to actually remove myself far enough to get the knowledge I need to gain, to ask the question, to see the insight. And so that's why it's so critical is because you can listen to a bunch of podcasts, but if you're still in the shit and you don't actually physically separate yourself, whether that's stepping into a new location to have that call with a mentor or getting to a high level mastermind for a day, a weekend, whatever that is, I think it's really hard to make that jump in business because you're not going to be in a place to receive the information.
I agree with that. And to double down on that, guys, we're not talking about the rah rah bigger pockets conference and like I'm not throwing shade at bigger pockets or anything, but there's a difference between being intentional about growing your business and going to an event that fosters that can propel you into the future. Like this isn't a motivational event. This is a mastermind is something you pay a lot of money for to get the tactical knowledge to build the skills that are going to drive your business. So this isn't like oh, I'm going to go to a meetup or I'm going to go to a conference or a big event or whatever and hear people on stage talk about taking action and then I'm going to feel great and then I'm going to go home and do it. That's not what this is. So, well said.